Hi, how are you doing today? I'm doing great because it's a really fun video. I'm going to be talking about my favorite books that I read in 2024. Sad news is, out of the 160 books that I read in 2024, only 15 of them were 5 stars. That's not even 10%. That's so depressing. But let's not focus on that. Let's instead focus on the 10 books I selected for this video to represent my favorites. These are books I absolutely adored this year, and I can't wait to talk to you about them. These are just in the order that I read them in, actually, because ranking them is way too difficult. I'm not doing that. So don't even try to trick me into doing that. But let's just go through them. So the first book we're going to talk about today is Bright by Ellie Hazelwood. This is actually my first 5-star of 2024, fun fact, but it's also still one of my favorites of the year. This is a paranormal romance following Misery, who is a vampire, and she kind of gets set up into this arranged marriage with the new alpha of his werewolf pack to reserve the peace between the vampires and werewolves in his world. So yeah, it's a romance, and it's by Ellie Hazelwood, and I eat up everything she writes except None in Love. I don't like that, but I don't know. I feel like her writing is just perfectly for me. I feel like she is a very hit or miss author for most people, but I love her, and this book was no exception. I thought this was such a fun book. I had such a blast reading this, and also I feel like if you're like went through a Twilight phase, a paranormal romance phase that day, I think this is very reminiscent of that, but modern, and I just really like that. Felt nostalgic in that sense because of that as well. I also really loved our characters. I loved the romance that had me swooning. This is told in Misery's POV, but at the start of each chapter we do get like this like a little like 2 lines usually that is from the guy's perspective, and it just, I love that so much. I thought it was such a fun spin on it. And yeah, I'm really hoping we do get kind of like sequels to this following different couples. Then next we have the Well of Ascension by Berlin Sellison. This is book 2 in the Mistborn trilogy, and I again just fucking love this one. I read the first book in this trilogy at this very start of the year, and I really enjoyed that, but it just was just barely missing from a 5-star, and I had good hopes going into book 2, and they were just fulfilled because this was incredible. It's a chunk of a book, yet I never wanted to put this one down because the plot just had me engaged the entire time through. I really like our cast of characters. I wasn't the biggest fan of our female main character Vin in book 1, but in the sequel she has grown a lot, and she really grew on me as well, and I really liked her development throughout this book. I also like the cast of side characters. It was so good, and the ending, like, actually, I think my jaw dislocated when I read that. That's how far open it dropped, because it was just so masterfully crafted, and it really spun everything you thought was happening on its head in such a brilliant, fantastic way. And I'm still so upset that I didn't get around to reading book 3 in this series this year, but it's so high up on my TBR for 2025 that, it will happen. Then next we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab. This is a kind of more literary book following Addie LaRue, who at a certain point in her life when she was younger, she was set up for an arranged marriage, and she really, really didn't want that. So she ended up making a deal with, I believe it's death. I don't remember the entire thing, but I believe it's death, to be able to live forever and have freedom. It's only that in exchange for that, nobody will remember her. Like, when she comes across them, as soon as she kind of like turns around, they'll forget about her. And this book kind of, not really, but like kind of the plot of this book kind of starts off when she meets a guy who remembers her. And yeah, it is such a good book. And again, this is one that I've been really to read for a while, and I was kind of upset at myself not reading it earlier, letting myself be intimidated from reading this book, because honestly I thought it was brilliant. I do notice not everyone's cup of tea, and I understand that, because this is a really, really slow book and almost nothing happens in it. But that's what I loved about it. You just get Addie's life as she lived, and it mainly is set in kind of like modern times with that storyline, but then we do also get sections that are flashbacks, starting often to when she first made this deal, and then like going through different parts of her life and seeing her grow as she moves around the world and experiences different things and lives life throughout centuries. And I thought it was such a beautiful book. I really loved Addie. I love following her. I loved her growth throughout like all of it, and I loved seeing her change and grow throughout this very large percentage of time. The next book on this list is King of Sloth by Anna Wan, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it felt like I read this so long ago, but this is the fourth book in the Kings of Sin series, which follows different billionaires and their romances. And in this one, we follow Sloane, who is a character we've seen in the rest of the series a lot. She's the best friend of two of our protagonists in the rest of the series. So she's been in the friend group for a while, and she is a basically like a she's a publicist, and she has this one client called Xavier who is a pain in her ass. And honestly, that's the best description. He's a pain in her ass, but he actually is kind of in love with her a little bit as a little quash. Again, this is one that I kind of, it's the thought is in my brain because it generally felt like I read this longer ago, but I did still really love this, don't get me wrong. It is my second favorite in the series. It is such a great book. Like, I annotated this, like, look at all those steps. I really enjoyed this one. I just think Sloane and Xavier were really interesting characters to follow, and I like both of their progression throughout the novel. Both of them also have family issues, very different family issues, but I liked seeing that incorporated into the story as well. I really loved their romance. I kind of loved how that developed this book. I feel like it was a bit of a slower development because Sloane was very reluctant to get into a relationship with one of her clients, obviously. So I like that aspect of it. I also feel like this one was a bit more of an emotional book. It's not like an emotional romance, but compared to some of Anna Wang's other books, I feel like this one kind of went more in depth with those characters' personal journeys, went into the emotions a bit more, and I really like that aspect to it. And I just overall was just swooning throughout this book as well, because I just thought the romance was so well crafted, and yeah, I adore this again. Then next on the list we have another romance. This one is Funny Story by Emily Henry, and this one actually took me by surprise because I read this a little bit later than most people did. It's another 2024 release, and I feel like this is one that I saw a lot of, not necessarily negative reviews of, but a lot of people say that they were disappointed in this book, having loved a lot of Emily Henry's previous works. So I was going into this a bit hesitant, but I generally think this, again, is like one of my favorites by her. This one follows Daphne, who at the start of this book, she has just gotten broken up with her fiance, because her fiance on his bachelor night, his best friend just confessed her love to him, and he was like, oh yeah, I love you too, and broke up with Daphne, which is so wild to me, but oh well. And you know, the best friend, the girl, also had a partner, and because Daphne has now kind of been kicked out of the house that she was living in, and she especially moved to this town because of her fiance, and like she doesn't know anyone there, so she ends up moving in with, you know, the girl's ex-boyfriend, whose name is Miles, to make things easier for me, because, you know, he's also down on his luck now, because, you know, his girlfriend also left him, and it's a romance. Basically, it's a romance between Miles and Daphne, and this is, I love this one. Again, I love Miles and Daphne as separate characters a lot. I love the friendship they first built in this book, and then that eventually developed into a romance, and I thought that was so masterfully done. I feel like this book perfectly balances kind of like every emotion and ascent that comes with being broken up with, in a sense that you never expected, and grieving a relationship, grieving the life you were gonna have with this person, the life you envisioned yourself having. I feel like it balanced out really well with also, of course, establishing a new romance, a new romantic life. I thought that was really well done. Then next, The Extraordinary Disappointments of Leopold Berry by Ransom Wicks. If you've been on this channel before, you know that the Miss Peregrine series by Ransom Wicks is one of my favorite series of all time. So I was very, very excited for Ransom Wicks' new release this year. And I was also a bit nervous because it's the first time I was gonna be reading something by him that wasn't Miss Peregrine, so you know, it might still be a miss, but I am so glad to say that I just so love this, and I so desperately need book 2 like right now. I really do, because I thought this was so good, but it also is just the start of this, like, of this story. It very much feels like the start of something much bigger, and I want that much bigger so badly, because if this start is so good, I only can imagine what the rest is gonna be like. But in this book, we follow Leopold Berry, who his entire life is kind of seen random things happening, especially since his mother passed away and he discovered these old tapes that she had from the show called Thunderworld. And he's just been like serial things from the show kind of like happening in real life as well. And he has learned to kind of like repress that because, you know, it's gotten him into situations. And now at the start of this novel, it's back and stronger than ever. And he and his best friend kind of wind up accidentally in Thunderworld and it's real. And it is such a good book. I love Leopold. I think he is such a great main character. I really enjoy kind of seeing his personal development throughout this book, and he has a very difficult relationship with his father, and I thought that was really interesting to see tackled within this book as well. His friendship with his best friend is also so precious to me. I love him so much already, and I just know that it's only going to get stronger as the book continues. In the second half of this book, another side character gets introduced that I also really liked, and again, I can't wait to see more of that character in future books. I think Thunderworld is so incredibly interesting. We spent surprisingly little time in this book in Thunderworld. It is quite a chunk, but like I expected it to be much more, and it's such an interesting world with such interesting magic, and I'm very intrigued to delve into it more because we definitely only scraped the tip of the iceberg with this one. You can tell there's so much more beneath the surface. And then next I read Blue Lily Lily Blue by Maggie Stiefvater, and this again was another surprise because even though I really enjoyed book 1 and 2 in the Raven cycle, they were not 5 stars. This one was. This was just so good, and I stand by that this is the best book in the series, like easily. And if you think it's not, fight me, like genuinely, because this was just such a good book. In the Raven Boys, the first book in the series, we follow Blue, who comes from a family of psychics. She isn't a psychic, but she does kind of have this thing where she kind of like, it's like a battery on a psychic, if that makes sense. Like she's an extra source of power. And her entire life she's kind of heard that she's gonna kill her true love by kissing them. And then at the start of the novel, she and one of her aunts, they go to like a graveyard on like a special day, and they always on that day see ghosts of people who are gonna die in that year. And she typically doesn't see any of the ghosts. She's just there to kind of like be able to enhance the aunt's like powers. And this night she does see a ghost, and it basically means that either she's gonna kill this person or it's gonna be a true love. And this person ends up being Ganzi, who together with his two best friends has been looking for this Welsh king among like the ley lines and everything. It's like this whole legend about it. And of course, Blues and Ganzi's and the other Raven Boys paths cross, and that's how the story continues. And this is book 3 in the series, and I think it's so good. I feel like when you're talking about a fine family book, you're talking about this series. The dynamics between his between his friend group is so good. It's a bit complex, that everyone gets along perfectly, but it's very realistic and it's so well done. I love this cast of characters so much. The atmosphere is through the roof, and I also just like Blue's family and like all of the different side characters as well in this book. It's just so well written. And then this book in particular just is very plot heavy. Like from start to end, you just feel the stakes being risen within the series. Like we're getting to like the climax of the next book. Sadly enough, the last book was a disappointment, but I generally felt anxious at times reading this book. I read this in one sitting because I just couldn't put it down. I just needed to know what was going to happen next. And the way we expanded on this world, the way we expanded on the story was just so masterfully done. Then next we have Fang Fiction by Kate Stapleton London. This book follows our main character whose name I've forgotten. I don't have the physical copy with me so I can check. And she's been obsessed with this vampire book series, and there have been these conspiracies all across the world that these books are actually based on something that happened in real life. And then she works in a hotel, and one night this woman who looks exactly like the female main character of these books comes to her and is like, "Hi, I need your help." And our main character therefore gets sucked in to the world of her favorite books. And I really liked it. I again think this is not gonna be one that's gonna be for everyone, but it was just perfect for me. I really love the lore of this world, like the way the vampires worked, the whole history behind that and everything. I thought was just really well crafted, and I really liked. You could definitely see how it pulled elements from different pieces of vampire fiction, but I thought it was just massively put together. I really liked the main character and kind of her journey throughout this book. I thought was really well done. There were kind of 2 romances in this one, and I thought both of them were just great and had me swooning. There are a little bit incel love, but I generally didn't care. that shows you how well they were done. And the plot was also just really captivating and fun. I generally had so much fun reading this book, but also deals with a bit more darker topics as well. But I do think it balances both of those things really well. Then of course you have a mandatory Percy Jackson with Battle of the Triple Goddess by Cory Ordell. I don't even know how to review this. These are the sequel books to the Percy Jackson series, technically still part of it, but in this one and the previous one, Shadows of the Gods, we follow Percy, who kind of has to undertake 3 quests to be able to get into college. And he does that, of course, with the help of Annabeth and Grover. This is book 2, and I just loved it so much. I feel like book 1 of these senior year adventures, as they're called, was a bit more emotional and like very nostalgic in a sense. This one was just more of a fun romp. It takes place over Halloween time, and it's just such a blast. I did a full spoiler vlog for this if you want to go watch that, but I just adore this. I love Percy, I love Annabeth, I love Grover. I generally really like the story. I like the things this book also kind of discusses when it comes to a bit more like sentimental topics, but overall just a fun Halloween kind of like cozy fantasy, and it generally just feels like going on an adventure with your best friends, and I loved it. And then we have already arrived to the last book of today, and that's Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. In this book we follow our main character. I literally just read this and I already forgot her name, but our main character, she and her twin sister kind of grew up, like they're from a witch family, so they are witches, and they grew up with these amulets and that were made to protect them, but they've always been told to not let the 2 amulets touch because that could open the gates for the Princes of Hell to come into this world. But as little kids, they don't really believe these stories, think they're just beliefs of their grandmother to like scare them off a little bit, kind of like the boogeyman, and they just, out of curiosity, just touch it for like a single moment. A purple beam comes out and they just immediately like, no, what do we do? And promise each other to never talk about it with anyone, not even with each other. And now, like 10 years later, they're 18 years old, and at the very start, things are kind of sketchy in this world, especially the most questionable thing that's happening right now is that young witches are turning up dead with like their hearts ripped out. At the start of this novel, our main character's twin sister winds up dead in the same way, and therefore our main character ends up kind of in an investigation of what happened to his sister, and within that investigation, at the very start, she kind of ends up accidentally summoning a Prince of Hell who is now tied to her until she has solved her sister's murder. And yeah, I read this book. I read this so quickly. I apologize because I read this for a reading vlog then. My December wrap-up went up also very recently. So you're probably tired of hearing me talk about this book because it is my most recent read of these ones. But I do have to talk about it. I read it. I loved it. I love her main character. I feel like she was very badass. Just, I don't know, she didn't take anyone's shit. I really like that. I also thought the world design is very like gothic, witchy atmosphere vibes were also really well done. I also really liked our guy, like the love interest, the Prince of Hell. I thought he was very interesting. I kind of loved the banter between the two of them. And overall it was a very captivating story as well. That even though most of the twists I did see coming, I was shocked just because the main character was shocked, and I just felt what she was feeling so badly because it was just so well written. And yeah, loved it. And yeah, those were my 10 favorites of 2024. I feel I really talked for a really long time. I'm so sorry. But let me know in the comments what your favorite books of 2024 were. And then I guess I'll see you next time. Bye. Here I am again, the same old situation. Why does the God thing have to be so complicated?